To outline or not to outline? That is the question. Well, today I'm going to go over outlining. But before we do that, from my last video, I got some feedback and it said, hey, you know what? You never told us your name. And I was like, really? So I went back and I looked at the video and everything, and it's true. I never told anybody my name. Told you a little bit about my history and everything, my background, but never told you my name. So I figured, well, might as well tell you now. The last 20 years, everybody has called me Coach Bruce. Coach Bruce. So I figured, you know what? They're still calling me that right now, so I might as well just keep with that. And I say, well, glad to meet you. I am Coach Bruce, and this is Writing with Coach Bruce. Okay, right now we're going to go over some outlines out here. There are many out there, and I can probably go on for days and days and days and talk about different types of outline that people use to structure their stories. I'm going to go over just about 5, which seems, from my research, seem to be the ones that you hear a lot about. Okay, the first one is the 3 structure act. And you can see 3 structures: set up, confrontation, resolution. I like this ascending action as you go along your story. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you get to your climax, and then you wrap everything up. This is very simple, effective framework. It's straightforward. Okay. Next one is the Finchian curve. I like this rising action. This is actually a neat concept. So you would come up here and you would have a crisis, and then you would have a de-escalation and set up for the next crisis, and then de-escalation and set up for the next crisis, and so on and so on. You can have as many as you need to as you rise up to that final climax, and then you fall in action. We wrap everything up. This is really nice. The only thing I could see that I don't like about it is you can get very routine. There's a crisis and then the de-escalation. Crisis, de-escalation. So you need to mix some things up in there so you don't become routine if you use this kind of structure, I believe. Next one is Save the Cat. This is a 15 beat structure. From everything I've read, it appears to me to be very, very rigid in structure. You will do this first and this and this and this as you go along. So, some people really like that, some don't. But there's a couple points in here I really appreciate. First one would be number 7, the B story. That is your subplot. That is a great place where you could add another character that's running parallel to the storyline. So it almost becomes like a sub thing where somebody else is doing exactly the same thing, or a love interest, whatever you need to. But it's a great point to put in the subplot. The other one is number 11. This is the one I really like, and that is All is Lost. This is where you can stand there and you have a low in life. You hit rock bottom. A character has hit rock bottom. Before you get that climax, if you hit rock bottom right before your climax, it makes it more dramatic. And that makes it really nice for the readers to get, I believe. Next one is the 7-point structure. Again, you keep seeing this thing about this rise and fall, like you did in Finchian curve and everything. You got your plot point, and then you got your pinch point kind of set up, and then midpoint and everything. The thing I like about this is step 1, the hook. I like this idea of starting off with a hook to grab your audience, make them invested in your story right from the very beginning. I think that's really key. You want people to read what you wrote, right? You spent years writing the story. You want people to finish it, right? Next one would be, which is the one that's very popular, is the hero's journey, heroic journey. This is really, you see this a lot with Tolkien book, like The Hobbit and everything. You set up your world, they got to go to adventure, they're hesitant about it, then they go through their whole initiation, transformation. That's the trials and tribulation of life, of their adventure they're going on. And then they return home, the hero comes back. This is the part I've really latched on, I think. Step 11, that atonement. I look at no matter what happens in life, be it your book or this life in general, You atone for everything you do, be it good or bad. We atone for it. So that brings in that internal conflict and everything. You atone for what you did. To get to this point, did I do all good or did I do bad or did I do a combination of it? Nobody's perfectly good or perfectly bad out there. So it's a combination. So you need to atone something. And then that return, your very last step. How did I change internally and externally from my journey, and how did my world change? I think that's a really neat concept, or really neat to bring that in at the very end. How did everything change from my adventure? Did I change? Did I make a difference in the world? Yes or no? That's what you're doing here. So these are just a couple of real quick ones I did some research on. There's a lot of them. You know, everybody is a little bit different in how they do the story, and it's up to them what kind of structure they like to use if they are a plotter. Okay, we just went over 5 basic outlines out there. There are many out there, but we just went over 5 of them. When I started writing and I started doing this journey, I didn't know any of this stuff. I just did my outlining, and then we're going to go over that now. What did I do to outline? All right, I started my journey by just standing there and brainstorming. I just wrote every idea I had and just put them down on paper. No particular order, just put them all down there. I'll put them down, I'll organize them later, is my thought process. Just put them down there. Let's get it down now. And then I just drew out a line. And I said, this is where I want to start, and this is where I want to end. And listening to all these different videos, I heard something that really resonated with me, and that was write the end to write your story. And at first I was like, huh? And then I thought about it. I'm not really writing the end, but if I know where my end of my journey is and where I'm starting, it gives me a nice clear path. It's like you're going to take a trip. If I know where my destination is, my end, and where I'm starting, I can plan my trip out. So I kind of looked at it like that way. So I stand there and set up my start and end point. And then I threw down points. And this looks very much like a 3-point structure, doesn't it? I set up my Act 1, where I'm going to stand there and do my world building and my characters' development and everything. And in midpoint's that point of no return. The top of Act 2 right there is the climax, and then the end, which is your resolution. Very straightforward, exactly like your 3-point with your points in between. And then I stand there and added a couple things onto that. In the beginning of my start, I wanted to add a hook. Just like in the 7-point structure, I wanted to add a hook. I wanted my readers to be invested. I wanted them to stand there and say, when they start reading it, hey, I like this. I want to read the whole thing. Because, who wants to spend years writing a book that nobody wants to read the whole thing? So I got to grab them right away. Then I stand there and put in different obstacles, be it external, internal, throughout the story, that would support those main points, the Act 1, the midpoint, and the Act 2. Right before Act 2, I have that all is lost. If you remember, that came from Save the Cat. I didn't call it, I wanted to make that low point. Because again, I like that whole concept of having a low point in somebody's life, in my protagonist's life, and then hit the climax. It really shows the range of my character's development right there, from going from one extreme to the other. And then go into my resolution. In my resolution, I wanted to add something that actually relates to the hero's journey. Those last 2 points, the first one being atonement. During their journey, nobody is perfectly good or perfectly bad. You do a little bit in our lives, a little bit of both kind of throw themselves in there. So I wanted them to atone for the good and bad things that happen along their journey. And at the end, how did things change? How did the world around them change? How did they change internally? So this is the structure that I set up. Now you just saw what kind of outline I did. I said you can see all the similarities between my outline and some of the other ones and everything. And I did the outline because I wanted to make sure I stayed on track. I've heard a lot of the things saying, well, those who outline are not as creative because it kills your creativity. And I don't think so. And I heard something on one video on BookFox, a guy named John Fox, the guy there. He said you could be a chef or a cook. A chef is very rigid. He goes step by step by step by step. Or a cook, you know, at home, mom cooking dinner or dad cooking dinner, they use the recipes as a general guideline. And that's what I'm doing with my outline. They keep me in a general motion to go in a certain direction. Make sure I don't run down some rabbit hole and get lost, and I can continue going. That's why I'm hoping that will help to increase the chance of me being productive. Okay. So today, like I said, we just went over a quick brief on outlining. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, if you go ahead and like this video and subscribe and join me for my next step in my journey. Thank you.